What's going on today, YouTube? Rob here. In today's video, I'm going to be profiling my Numeron Eldlich deck. This is something that I've kind of wanted to build for a while and just never really got around to doing it. I find that this deck is actually pretty cool, as it can OTK, but it can also grind into the late game. And again, this is what I came up with, and I hope you guys enjoy. If you do, be sure to leave a like and be sure to comment on what you might want to see next, or maybe some of the changes you might make to this deck to make it a little bit better. Before we get started though, I just want to say, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing for more fun Yu-Gi-Oh videos, and without wasting any more of your time, let's get into it. Alright guys, let's get into this Numeron Eldlich deck profile. So to start off, we have 2 copies of the man himself, Eldlich the Golden Lord. This card lets you send this card and 1 spell or trap from your hand to the graveyard, then target 1 card on the field and send it to the graveyard. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send 1 spell or trap you control to the graveyard and add this card to your hand. Then you can special summon 1 zombie monster from your hand, and if you do, until the end of your opponent's turn, it gains 1000 attack and defense, and also cannot be destroyed by card effects. You can only use each of the effects of Eldlich the Golden Lord once per turn. Next up, I have an optional engine, and that is the Dark Dragoon package. So we have 1 copy of Red Eyes Black Dragon and 1 copy of Dark Magician. Next up, we have 3 copies of Numeron Wall. If you control no cards except Numeron Wall or Wall's quick effect, you can send this card from your hand or field to the graveyard and activate 1 Numeron network directly from your hand or deck, and you can only use the effect of Numeron Wall once per turn. When you take battle damage, you can special summon this card from your hand, and if you do, end the battle phase after the damage step. Lastly, for the monsters, in this variant, I have triple copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. This card allows you, when a card or effect is activated that includes any of the following effects: quick effect, you can discard this card and negate that effect. So it's either adding a card from deck to hand, special summoning from the deck, or sending a card from deck to graveyard, and you can only use this effect of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring once per turn. That's it for the monsters. Let's move on to the spells. So to start off, we have triple copies of Elixir of White Destiny. This card lets you special summon 1 zombie monster from your hand or graveyard, but if you control no Eldlich monsters, you can only special summon Eldlich monsters with this effect. And for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters except zombie monsters, and during your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard and set 1 Golden Land spell or trap directly from your deck, and you can only use 1 Elixir of White Destiny effect per turn, and only once that turn. Next up, we've got triple copies of Cursed Outland. You cannot declare attacks except with zombie monsters, and you can only use each of the following effects of Cursed Outland once per turn. So you can pay 800 life points and add 1 Eldlich monster or 1 Golden Land spell or trap from your deck to your hand, and if this card is sent from the spell and trap zone to the graveyard, you can send 1 Eldlich monster or 1 Golden Land spell or trap from your deck to the graveyard. Next up, we have 2 copies of Elixir of Black Awakening. This lets you special summon 1 zombie monster from your hand or deck in defense position, but if you control no Eldlich monsters, you can only special summon Eldlich monsters with this effect. And for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters except zombie monsters. You can banish this card from your graveyard and set 1 Golden Land spell or trap directly from your deck. You can only use one Eldlich or Black Awakening effect per turn, and only once that turn. Next up for the spells, we have the one copy of Red Eyes Fusion, which allows you to fusion summon one fusion monster that lists a Red Eyes monster as material from your extra deck, using materials from your hand, deck, or field as fusion materials, and if you do, its name becomes Red Eyes Black Dragon. You cannot normal or special summon monsters for the rest of the turn after you activate this card. You can only activate one Red Eyes Fusion per turn. Next up, we've got 3 copies of Numeron Network. This lets you, during your main phase, add one Numeron normal spell card that meets the activation conditions from your deck to the graveyard, and this effect becomes that spell's effect when this card is activated. And you can only use the effect of Numeron Network once per turn, and Numeron Xyz monsters you control can activate their effects without detaching materials. This comes up really often, considering that most of our extra deck is Numeron-based monsters. Lastly, for the spells, we have our other Numeron card, Numeron Calling. If Numeron Network is in your field zone and you control no monsters, special summon up to 4 Numeron Gate Xyz monsters with different names from your extra deck, but banish them during the end phase. Also, you can only normal or special summon once for the rest of the turn. That's it for our spells. Let's move on to the traps. So to start off for traps, we have 3 copies of Conquistador of the Golden Land. This card lets you special summon this card as a normal monster, zombie, light, level 5, attack 500 and 1800 defense. Then, if you control an Eldlich the Golden Lord, you can destroy one face-up card on the field, and during the end phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard and set one Eldlich or Speller drop directly from your deck, and you can only use one Conquistador of the Golden Land effect per turn, and only once that turn. Next up, we've got triple copies of Scarlet Sanguine. This card lets you special summon one zombie monster from your deck or graveyard, but if you control no Eldlich monsters, you can only special summon Eldlich monsters with this effect. And for the rest of the turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters except zombie monsters, and you can banish this card from your graveyard and set one Golden Land spell or trap directly from your deck. You can only use one Eldlich of Scarlet Sanguine effect per turn, and only once that turn. Next up, we have triple Wakero of the Golden Land. Again, you can special summon this card as a normal monster, zombie, light attribute, level 5, attack 1800 and defense 1500. Then, if you control an Eldlich the Golden Lord, you can banish one card from either graveyard, and during the end phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard and set one Eldlich or spell or trap directly from your deck, and you can only use one Wakero of the Golden Land effect per turn, and only once that turn. Next up, we have 3 copies of Solemn Judgment. When a monster or monsters would be summoned or spell or trap card is activated, pay half your life points and negate the summon or activation, and if you do, destroy that card. You can substitute this for anything, but you could also substitute this for Solemn Strike, which just allows you to pay 1500 life points rather than half, to basically have the same effects. And lastly, for our main deck, we have triple copies of Dogmatica Punishment. This lets you target one face-up monster your opponent controls, and send one monster with an equal or higher attack from your extra deck to the graveyard, and if you do, destroy that monster. Until the end of your next turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. You can only activate one Dogmatica Punishment per turn. That's it for our main deck. Let's move on to the extra deck. So to start off, we have 2 copies of number C1 Numeron Chaos Gate Sunya. This requires 4 level 2 monsters, but using Numeron Network and Calling, you were able to special summon this without having any monsters on the field. You can also Xyz summon this card using number 1 Numeron Gate Echem that you control as materials. If this card is Xyz summoned, banish all monsters on the field, and once per turn during your next standby phase after this card was banished, you can special summon this banished card. Then, if Numeron Network is in your field zone, inflict damage equal to your opponent equal to the combined attack of all banished Xyz monsters. Next up, we have the 1 copy of AA Zeus. This requires 2 level 12 monsters. Once per turn, if an Xyz monster battled this turn, you can also Xyz summon Divine Arsenal AA Zeus by using 1 Xyz monster you control as material. Quick effect, you can detach 2 materials from this card and send all other cards on the field to the graveyard, and once per turn, if another card or cards you control is destroyed by battle or an opponent's card effect, you can attach 1 card from your hand, deck, or extra deck to this card as material. Next up, we have the 1 copy of Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Juggernaut Libe. This requires 3 level 11 monsters, and once per turn you can Xyz summon this card by using 1 rank 10 machine Xyz monster that you control as material. Once per turn you can detach 1 material from this card and it gains 2000 attack and defense, and also for the rest of this turn you can only declare an attack with this card. And during each battle phase, this card can make attacks on monsters up to the number of Xyz materials that it has, +1. Next up, we have the 1 copy of Super Dreadnought Rail Cannon Gustav Max. This is also for your Juggernaut Libe, but this requires 2 level 10 monsters, and once per turn you can detach 1 material from this card and inflict 2000 damage to your opponent. Next up, we have 2 copies of number 3 Numeron Gate Trini. This requires 3 level 1 monsters, cannot be destroyed by battle, and at the end of the damage step, if this card battled an opponent's monster, you can detach 1 material from this card, double the attack of all Numeron monsters that you currently control until the end of this turn. So this card is really good for starting off your OTKs when you have all of your Numeron monsters on the field. Next up, we have 2 copies of number 2, Numeron Gate Deve. This requires 3 level 1 monsters. Again, this cannot be destroyed by battle, and at the end of the damage step, if this card battled an opponent's monster, you can detach 1 material from this card and double the attack of all Numeron monsters that you currently control until the end of this turn. Next up, we have the 2 copies of our Numeron Gate Echem. This requires 3 level 1 monsters. Again, it cannot be destroyed by battle. And at the end of the damage step, if this card battles an opponent's monster, detach 1 material from this card and double the attack of all Numeron monsters that you currently control until the end of this turn. And lastly, for our Xyz package and our Numeron package, we have 2 copies of our number 4 Numeron Gate Katvari. And again, it cannot be destroyed by battle, and at the end of the damage step, if this card battled an opponent's monster, you can detach 1 material from this card and double the attack of all Numeron monsters that you currently control until the end of this turn. Next up, we have the 1 copy of Predaplant Verte Anaconda, which requires 2 effect monsters, and you can target 1 face-up monster on the field and it becomes dark until the end of this turn, And you could also pay 2,000 life points and send 1 fusion or polymerization normal or quick play spell from your deck to the graveyard, and this effect becomes that spell's effect when that card is activated. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn. You can only use each effect of Predaplant Verte Anaconda once per turn. He is only in the deck as a quick access to our last extra deck monster, which is Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. This requires Dark Magician plus Red Eyes Black Dragon or a Dragon effect monster. Cannot be destroyed by card effects, and neither player can target this card with effects. And during your main phase, you can destroy 1 monster that your opponent controls, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's original attack. And you can use this effect a number of times per turn, up to the number of normal monsters used as fusion material for this card. Once per turn, when a card or effect is activated, quick effect, you can discard 1 card, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And if you do that, this card also gains 1,000 attack. And that's it for the extra deck, and that's also it for this deck profile. Alright guys, that's it for this deck profile. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to leave a like. Also, be sure to comment on what you might want to see next. And as always, I will see you in the next one. That's game!